Hello, hello, hello. Which camera am I looking at? I'm looking at that one. How's it going, folks? Thanks for joining today. We're looking at some games about mining in space. We're looking at something from the previous game jam, and we're looking at something from, well, something new. I think in both cases today, yeah, these are both patrons games. So I say that both as a way of saying thanks to folks for supporting the channel and as my little disclaimer, because you were supposed to do that. I guess it is a sponsorship of sorts when you're playing your patrons games. And yeah, we're going to be checking out Sonar Mining Co., which was part of the it was the collab jam, and it was the brief that we had that the game needed to have no words in. It can have words in now because it's not part of the game jam. That was a game jam that we had where I set that restriction because I wanted people to focus on something I felt that they didn't focus on enough when they made their games, especially at the prototyping stage. And as an educator, you know, I try and if we do things like game jams, I try and come up with themes that I think will help people to focus on something that people are generally weak at, rather than just your kind of standard game jam themes where it's like, a creative prompt to try and get you to come up with something interesting. So the game jam this year, the restriction was that the game wasn't allowed to have any words or characters. This was one of the most popular games from the jam. It's like an incremental mining game where you are in a very nice kind of clunky little mining submarine, I guess. I called it mining in space, but this one is a submarine. And you're kind of mining through a very like crunchy sort of low poly 3D interface that felt really, really good. And it was a really good kind of application of the theme as well, because I tend to find, people don't focus enough on like visual communication and like making sure something is an icon when it should be an icon and stuff like that. And a lot of that is because people say, well, it's too early. I shouldn't do that. That's polish. And the visual component of your game mechanics is not polish, right? The basic communication of like what is happening with the things on screen and like the sound effect that lets you know what's happening, that's not polished. That is like a foundational part of the game. So I tend to find a lot of the time people make game jams and they game jam entries and they focus a little bit too much on like trying to put all of these things a game should have in like a start screen and stuff like that. And for me, it's like if you're trying to make proof of concept of a bigger game, make less of the game and polish it, even in a game jam. And I'm not saying that as like, here's how to win a game jam. I just think if you want to practice the skills that most people lack, make a much smaller game jam entry, make it really focused on making sure every interaction in the game like feels interesting and looks cool, and where it's very kind of immediately clear what you're supposed to do. So the goal of that game jam was really to get people to focus on that. And this was already a very good game in that context. So we're kind of coming back to it to see how it's developed a little bit. So we'll come back to that 1 second in, I don't know, about 40 minutes. We'll see how long we can get out of Project Restart. And Project Restart is a top-down incremental mining game. I'm kind of liking the art here. They've done what I would generally like people to do with these kind of, if you're downloading a game off of itch and you're sort of not super invested in learning the game and you're kind of almost doing the dev a favor by playtesting the game, you want this kind of stuff. You want all of the controls on the screen so that you can just kind of quickly learn the game without necessarily needing a formal tutorial. So the dev of this game said, I'm thinking about pushing this into a more sandboxy style where the player will have a goal of gathering some absurdly high amount of resources and will have various simple tools to do a physics-based automation. For example, building which accelerates rocks, other which stops them, other which extracts ore. I started with moving rocks in space, then pivoted into space mining, and now I'm drawn to automated moving rocks in space while mining them. Okay, cool. So that could be cool. I could see how that could work. So, automation works very well in games when we have like a type of friction which is initially kind of the core game, but would get annoying if we had to do it for a long time, and then we can start to like automate some of that friction away. And we had some devs give a talk in the in the Discord, like a recorded talk about incremental games recently. There was an interesting idea in there about the game unfolding and about how, like, you know, each bit of the mechanics is quite simple to do, but the game is something that kind of unfolds and you find secrets, or, you know, it might not be secrets. It might be just something that you haven't experienced yet, but you could see it coming up on the tech tree or whatever. But, you know, incremental games, good ones, kind of unfold and have different bits in them. And I think if you've started out with just kind of moving rocks around in space, then automation does feel like a natural fit for that. And it all lines up fantasy-wise with, you know, who's going to be interested in a spaceship game in the first place. The stars are fading, darkness is spreading across the universe. Beacon has been created to stop it. This has got a great mood already. Restore the light. Okay. Follow the markers. As to move, QE to strafe, so the little kind of diagonal forward buttons give us a strafe, whereas the other ones turn us. Space to brake and shift to use the afterburner, which boosts us. Okay, oh. This has a really cool mood to it. Reminding me a little bit of Sunless Seas, Sunless Skies, just very atmospheric already. Avoid the darkness, it will consume you. Okay, cool. Hey, Totally Futile, thanks for joining. Yeah, I mean, no one can ever go to every live. Using space as I'm finding using space as a brake a little bit unintuitive because it's so often like a jump or something. This is the beacon, okay. Then we go over there. Don't know if the sound is loud enough for you to hear the music. There's some really nice kind of existentially spooky space music going on here. Oh. Okay, hold the left mouse button to use the mining laser. That looks nice. Okay. Fly into ore to pick it up, or hold right mouse button to draw it to you. So it's all got sort of modular destruction of asteroids. That feels really nice. Feels interesting to do. Could see how it could get a bit tiresome because it's quite slow, but presumably we're going to be upgrading that function and, like you said, maybe even automating it later on. Oh yeah, the unfolding, you know, more of a general concept of like, I think my ore is filled up already. Oh yeah, cargo 10 out of 10. Down there at the bottom right next to my head. That's our cargo limit. And I'm carrying 10 things and it says it's 163 minerals, but I'm not sure if that means that... Okay, we press X to eject the cargo. That's great, that's a lovely little effect. So I hold X down, all of my cargo goes into the beacon. Hey Kyle. Doing good. Scheduled later today. I'm trying to move the streams around a bit so that they're not always in the morning my end. I'm finding I'm being a lot more productive with my own game and my book writing if I do it in the morning and then have a stream later in the day, and that is partly because it gives me a little bit of a deadline. So, you know, I got up, I went walking and had a read in a cafe, came back and spent like 2 hours working on my book, and then because I knew this stream was coming up, I think I probably got more writing done because it wasn't like a... Yeah, the movement is very simmy. There's a really nice mix of things here. The actual kind of movement is very sort of like delicate and physics simmy. But then the setting has got this kind of cool, melancholic It's a particular type of sci-fi. It's like, it feels like science fantasy, like Destiny or something like that, because we're doing cool, weird spaceships. We're doing lush colors. We're throwing the player in the deep end and not explaining the world too much apart from that top line, you know, the sun's gone out stuff. And that's great. That's just, I really like this kind of mood-driven stuff where they just give you just enough of the fantasy and then the art and everything is really supporting it. Yeah, I was just reading the last few pages of Next Level. I've still got a couple of bits to read before we record tomorrow, but really enjoying that book. Still don't understand wave function collapse though. We're trying to gather 200 minerals and 50 crystals. Oh, cool. Saved by gravity. Okay, we've got enough stuff to actually upgrade. I was not really following the stuff that the tutorial was asking me to do because I got into the loop and I was quite happy to just keep digging. Right, here we go, and then we'll see the next bit of the game. There's lots of things here that are very fiddly, but I could see them all being candidates for upgrading as well. Right, use the dock below the beacon, which is this. To get that exactly on there. Okay, cool. Have a good shift, Paul. Right. We can increase the cargo hold capacity by 10. I love the flavor of this title. Cargo compression. Right. That's done so much like, just like what that's doing with the sci-fi theme. Instead of saying this is upgrading the size of your cargo hold, to just basically invent this type of technology that allows us to compress the cargo. And then just let the player kind of ponder that in their own time and think about it. That's really cool. I like that. Very evocative. We can increase the laser damage. We can reinforce the hull so we can bump into stuff. We can safely travel into darkness at the expense of power. I'm going to make it easier to zap things. I'm going to get the cargo compression. I'm going to get 2 lots of cargo compression, and I will get the hull. I tend to, unless I'm really struggling with the game, I do tend to avoid upgrades that are for like, here's if you mess up, you know? Or always kind of prioritize the new toys over the bigger health bar or whatever. Most of the time, unless I'm really struggling with the game quite a bit. Keep wondering whether you can accidentally destroy the ore if you overheat it. Your laser isn't strong enough to break through the core layer. Okay. You can see when we do that, it doesn't heat up anymore, so there is a kind of visual tell. We've still got half an empty cargo hold. I think it's 3D, because if you look at the lighting, it's either if it's not 3D, then it's doing some very clever stuff with with what's it called? You can get 2D systems that do kind of fake bump maps and stuff, so you can light 2D things. I know that people have built plugins for Game Maker that do that, but I suspect yeah. But I suspect it's just 3D. Okay, we're charging from the beacon. By default. Glad you appreciate that stuff. Yeah, I honestly just find a lot of the YouTube edutainment space is a little bit infantilizing for stuff that is aimed at adults, you know? I really think if you're an adult and you're trying to do something that is effectively like starting a business, which, you know, making a game is on some level, then you kind of need to be grown out of always do this, never do this type thinking. Sorry, that was just in response to Default in the chat, who was saying about the video I did about how people should stop looking for advice. That's not really true. I think people should look for advice, but I don't think videos are advice. Videos are very good at certain things. They're good at giving you perspectives and other people's experience. You still have to do a bit of like converting that in your head into like how is it relevant to you. And the way I've been thinking about it a lot recently is that like giving advice is a interpersonal thing. So someone who is your friend or your teacher or something can give you advice because they know who you are and they can kind of like triangulate what they know with who you are and where you are. But like a video from someone that doesn't know you can't give you advice. It can tell you about what this person thinks is a best practice or something. That's not advice. Like, advice is personalized. Lantern? Let's go for more cargo compression. Let's get the lantern now. Although I don't really want to go in the dark. It's a bit scary. And we'll repair with the rest. Yeah, I didn't really do... Before I started my channel, I didn't really look at what was already out there in the space. I think, you know, my reference point for what game dev YouTube was is stuff that I'm personally interested in, which isn't going to be stuff that's aimed at beginners because I've been making games for a long time, right? So, you know, I watched Tim Kaine talk about his professional experience and give his opinions and stuff because, like, I like him and he made games that I like and respect. But I'm not watching Tim Kaine to actually learn how to do anything, you know? And then I think because I was always self-taught when it came to art and tech stuff, I never felt like that was the thing someone needed to be an authority on. So I was always perfectly happy with stuff like Game Maker's Toolkit and extra credits older stuff, because the kind of thinking prompts about game design and like how players think and, you know, how games work, that was always more interesting to me because I didn't need even now, if I want to know how something works in my game engine, a video is the last kind of format that I want from that. Because it's so much easier to skim a written article or a piece of documentation to find out what you need to know. I mean, I say that as if it's universal. I know lots of people don't find that easier to do, but for me, it's frustrating to watch a linear video to try and find out one piece of information about how something works. And the rare time I will watch videos that are actually for the technical aspects of making games, it will be to understand a concept. Like the last time I really watched a video tutorial for Game Maker was someone talking about constructors and what they are and what they do and what you use them for. It wasn't like, you know, follow along with me, copy the code type stuff. That wasn't what I needed help with. I needed like conceptual explanations of things. But yeah, there's a lot of folks where they're still kind of starting out. I mean, you get people that have this attitude forever. You know, every time I post something where I say anything even moderately complimentary about John Romero, I get loads of like programmers in their 40s and 50s kicking off because they're like, McCormack was the real hero. John Romero doesn't know anything. He can't even program. And they've never really got out of that mind state of thinking that like all game development is about how good you are at programming. And there's a lot of people that are just getting into that because, you know, it's the biggest barrier they face to being able to make games. So for them, the level of kind of trustworthiness that anyone has in their kind of takes on games and how to make them is all related to their hard skills as a programmer. And that's why Jonathan Blow is so popular among certain types of people as well. Oh. But not me, because he thinks that men shouldn't have nose rings. Sorry, just looking back through the chat. Yeah, people don't know how to learn. And that's not their fault. Most people go through an education system that is about like, you know, adherence and like following what people tell you to do, which is okay for certain types of thing, like, you know, working junior jobs. But anything where you need to be self-directed, it's not going to help you very much. Right, we're going to build the mining platform now. So have we got a bit of the automation in the game already? Is that what the mining platform's going to be about? Okay, we can build now. Attracts and mines nearby rocks. Can penetrate the core layer. Use clamp to bring rock to the platform. Okay. Oh, I can... Oh, this is cool. Yeah, this is kind of what we meant at the start by unfolding, right? We've got a new mechanic or a system, and suddenly it's like the game is... I mean, it's literally zoomed out in this case, but suddenly like we're just seeing a different scope and a different layer of the game. And like just as you might be starting to get bored with the core mechanics, the game's like, oh no, there's this other thing now. And it's not just adding a thing on in this case, it's going to modify the core mechanics. So we'll still be flying around zapping things, I imagine, but let's put it there in between those things. We can do more than one, so let's do 3 that are along here. Maybe that was wrong, but it's fine. Let's we're allowed to get it wrong. And actually I will dock again because I might have space for another upgrade. Oh, we've got loads more upgrades open now. 20% of lasers damage spreads to the surrounding cells. We need the clamp to use our mining platforms as well as we can. So, yeah, upgrades are set into stages. That's, you know, okay for now. It might not be the most elegant way of doing it, but it's... You know what I would appreciate as an upgrade is being able to scroll out with the mouse wheel, but maybe it is an upgrade. It's not like... It's not something we start off with. Because I do have this urge to be able to scroll out backwards and see more, but I could see how that would be like an unfair advantage, so it might make sense to have it as a as an upgrade in the tech tree. Right, I can't clamp that, and I think it's probably because it's too large for my current level of clamp. Yeah, I think meditative is a good word, actually. That's like that's the kind of word I would use as a design pillar and make sure it's in your kind of game description on Steam or whatever, because meditative is a very... I think calling this chill wouldn't be right. It is chill, but there's something about the kind of the way that you've done Deep Space and the kind of purple nebula and the music has that kind of well, it's like something from the what's it called? The Interstellar soundtrack or something. It's space as this kind of you know, that when you use certain types of music in sci-fi, it creates this sense of like reverence for the vastness of space, and all of that, you know, it does make it feel meditative, and there's such a better word for this than chill or relaxing, because I wouldn't say it's tense, but chill or relaxing is not quite as on point as meditative, because we've got that whole... I mean, even... I don't know if you can hear it, there's like a angel sound in the music, which again, you would get in a soundtrack like Interstellar, and it's kind of creating that that kind of spooky, big existential feeling. Oh. Okay, we can clamp every rock, so let's try and... Hull critical, we need to repair. Mate. Yeah, the clamp is very difficult to use. Right, we're going to go this way, pick these up, and then go back and repair on the way. Clumsiness is the danger. Which again kind of fits into that meditative feeling, right? It's like, we're only gonna die in this game if we're not careful. Battery, beacon navigation, just everything, just get everything. The speaking of max speed, the danger beep is very aware of how fast you're going, which is quite cool. Ah, there we go. Yeah, you really do have to run the risk of bumping into stuff to get the clamp to work. Very nice, though. Hey, mining platform. You gonna... Oh! Crystals. Look at that. Oh, I was trying to blast it while dragging it. So I know someone else in our Discord is working on quite a similar mining game. And at the moment he's putting, I think the last time we spoke, he was putting a bit more emphasis on like, oh, What happened? I don't know if I clicked in a weird place then and lost it. I lost focus. He's putting a bit more emphasis in like having to destroy barriers and like fly around and explore and stuff, which I think is a good direction. But I like the way that you've used the darkness as your kind of range barrier here. Right, so now instead of using our laser power, we should really be focusing on... We can even... Oh, look. You can let go of the clamp as you're going forward, and the momentum of your ship will... Oh. The momentum of your ship will kind of carry the rock. Can't get this one, it's too big. Too chunky. Right, you're coming with me, big boy. I can't even turn properly while I'm pushing this. That's bobbin. Uh-oh. I think I bumped into what I was pushing, which was a little bit confusing. Okay, so that time we shouldn't have risked it. It does become a little bit of a kind of push your luck element there, but you're always going to get that with this, you know, should I stay or should I go type thing. How long do I stay out on the run? Big rock. Let's get this one. I think the shape of the ship design really supports how the motion feels. Like, the way that it turns and the places where you see the thrusters positioned when you're using the different kind of combinations of inputs, it all feels really... Because you've got a ship that is so focused on, like, having this tight little turning circle, having the thrusters on the side. Just it feels like the physical design of the ship really helps you understand how it works to move it. It's good. Yeah, it is very Nostromo-esque. I still haven't seen Project Hail Mary, but I have seen the surprisingly okay, weird sci-fi Adam Sandler film, The Spaceman, which I believe is based on a Czech sci-fi novel. And this, this has those vibes. It has the same kind of, you know, melancholy in space vibes, like Moon. One of my favorite types of film is like, there's a guy in space and he's sad. Yeah, what's the book called? It's called The Spaceman of the Place, isn't it? Oh, Project Hail Mary. Okay. Similar premise. It's like, you know, lonely spaceman with a little friend. I quite liked Ad Astra. And yeah, that was a dude is sad in space film. mean, sacrilege, I know, but I even quite like the... I even quite like the Clooney one. What's it called? The Tartovsky film that he remade that's basically Event Horizon but not scary. Yeah, space is for being sad in. I think that's just a fundamental reality. Solaris, yeah. And a thing that's sort of dawning on me as I mess around with this a little bit more, now that we've got the clamp and we've got the ships out, I can kind of do stuff like this as well. I can take the, I can just take the rock really close to the thing and then blow it up when we're nearby. So what we're seeing here, which I think is a really just like a very kind of good thing for a game to have in general, is lots of different ways of the very common verbs and nouns to interact, right? We can stop and we can blow a rock up in one place, or we can move it somewhere else and do something with it, and or we can, we can clamp it and then start moving it and then use the momentum to do something else. So I feel like that means you've got a really kind of strong basis for a system that has a lot of play in it. I think I would like to... One of the things that I feel like I would like to be able to do more is pick rocks up and then, like, build up some sort of momentum and then let them go and try and do things by deliberately doing that, like having some way of I don't know, maybe I can, like, throw rocks into other rocks. That would be fun, and they will break. But I don't think it really works that way currently, but... Oh! Build an ore relay. An ore relay launches nearby ore towards a beacon. Ah, that's fun. That's going to be very fun. Now we're going to start making Space Marble Run. I think that's the idea now. Give me this one. Yeah, I think this game gets a lot of mileage out of the fact that we can do the same set of quite basic things in slightly different ways depending on the context. Like, do you want to blow something up and then pick the pieces up? Do you want to drag it over the beacon and blow it up there so you don't have to pick the pieces up? A lot of little different implications. Okay, we can build a small mining platform. We can make ejectors and attractors. So this is where we start to get into, we're doing Factorio conveyor belt stuff, but we're doing it in space with these free-floating physics objects. So that's interesting. Passively attract ore to the player. Buildings. Blueprint ore relay. Okay, that's what we want. We want to... go back to the build menu now. The menus are pretty intuitive. We need 150 minerals to start building ore relays. I'm going to demolish one of these so that I can just remember where the one I'm using is. Actually, I'm going to demolish them both and then build something over here where all the ore is. And then, yeah, so we're going to go out on a couple more runs, collect enough ore to be able to sort of build up a little relay and everything. And then we've sort of seen that part of the game, and we'll probably move on to the next one after that point. Yeah, Moon is a great film. I haven't watched it in years, but definitely one of my favorite sad guy in space films. Goodbye, Moon Man. Goodbye, Moon Man. Speaking of oil rigs, if you want a reasonably short horror experience that is incredibly polished, I would recommend checking out Still Wakes the Deep. I played it recently because it was on the PlayStation Plus thing. The subscription. The people that made... It's the Chinese rooms, the people that made Dear Esther and stuff. Doesn't really have much in the way of gameplay. You know, it's a horror game. But it's on an oil rig. And the thing that made it particularly special for me was it has this kind of level of social realism that you don't get in a lot of horror games that either just try and... A lot of people, when they make a horror game, you know, regardless of where they are in the world, they're just like, I'm going to set my game in America or Japan because I'm doing an homage to the things I'm interested in. But seeing a horror game set on an oil rig in the 1970s with all these characters who speak in full kind of Scots dialect and slang, and having all of these references to Margaret Thatcher and stuff, and then having that in a horror game with Lovecraftian elements, I found that very effective. Oh, I really want to be able to upgrade the power of my brake. My brake is not very good, and it's the most valuable tool. Ah! Pressed the wrong button. Give me back my rock. Rock! Oh my goodness. Dwayne The Rock Johnson, come back here. Right, that's it. I wanted to give you a respectful death over the beacon, and you just run away. Yeah, Kevin Spacey is the robot. Moon. Okay. Right, we're going to go back. We're going to build an ore relay. We're going to play around with those toys for a couple of minutes, and then we will go and check out the other game, which is actually not mining in space. It's mining in a sub, but it's the same sort of vibe. Okay, what are we building? We're building an ore relay. And we're building it here. Actually, let's build it right on the edge of the darkness. And a small mining platform. One there. And then we're gonna spend the last bit of our minerals on repairing. Let's go and get something to drag over to our new frickin' laser. Oh. Well, aren't you a large one? Let's tow that. Can we tow that? I don't think I'm going to have a very good chance of steering while towing this, but let's try it. Let's try it. Oh yeah. Wow, it's very hard to turn. Look at my power draining from being in the dark. Okay, that's beyond our means right now. Maybe I will use the cheats to check out if it's possible to upgrade to the stage where we can do that. But the thing is, I'm kind of enjoying just experiencing the game at its own pace now, so it's good that we have some debug cheats, but also I think it kind of speaks to what's good about the game already, that I kind of just want to... It's not a personal pride thing of not wanting to cheat, it's just like I'm quite enjoying just experiencing the friction that the game provides at the pace it currently does. Okay, so we picked those up, and then we got the relay here. Does that mean I can poop onto the relay like this? No, that's the wrong way. Go on, relay. Use your gravitational oh yeah, that's cool. I think it would be cool if there's like a path that you can see from the relay, but it doesn't show all the time. It only kind of like lights up as things go through it. So when stuff kind of gets shot out of the relay and starts going towards the beacon, you get like a brief, you know, like a path, like a lit path that's going to show you how far it's going to go. Doesn't go all the way though. I'm disappointed in you, relay. I thought you were the little relay that could. And you've let me down with your weak gravitational pushing. But not to worry. We'll get you some help. Stage 4 is not yet ready. Thanks for playing. Okay. Another ore relay. So that one's there, and then we can kind of chain them. And you always just use your leftovers to top up your repair after the after you've done the shop. Which is kind of what tended to happen in FTL, I think. It's a good way of crafting a shop in a game, you have things that cost set amounts, and then there's like something like a repair function which just costs X, you know, so you can always use up your last 12 gold in the shop or something. Feels quite satisfying. I think it stops you overthinking the purchases, because if you've got that thing that always costs X, you always come away from the shop feeling like you've spent things efficiently because you just topped up your healing or your repair with that thing at the end. Yeah, it's very hard to clamp sometimes, and I'm not always sure why I'm failing on the clamp, you know? Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Well, 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 if it isn't a tasty meatball. Listen, buddy. We haven't gotten off to a good start. I think I just keep trying to pick up stuff that's too big, but I managed to clamp onto that massive one a minute ago, so... Let's get out of here. Or we get exploded. Okay, cool. I'm gonna end it there for now. I really like this. There's a lot here to like. In terms of like small things, the clamp doesn't feel good. When you just sort of... The problem is I'm experiencing these errors and it's saying the clamp hasn't worked, the clamp hasn't worked, but there's nothing there to teach me how I would do it properly, you know? If it was like... There's the two strings of the clamp that come out, and if one of them like goes red or something to show that you've got the angle wrong, fine. But there's just nothing there to give me the information to let me know how I would do it better each time. So I'm not learning from those failures. I love the central concept of just like this kind of unfolding thing where we're gradually building automations, but those automations aren't like gridded tracks or anything. They're using the sort of physics pushing around, pulling around stuff that we've already experienced with the ship. Really nice. The just general vibes of it. I think that there's a few things you could do here with the interface to put things in better places. So I kept finding that the HP, I wasn't really, I wasn't always aware of it. And I think maybe putting those things maybe closer to the ship, or just maybe not pushing them out so far to the edge might be helpful. Or just making sure there are some little tells on the ship, you know, when our HP is below 50%, we start to get black smoke or whatever that kind of increases in regularity the lower it is. But this feels like a game that is kind of... trying to think of the right way to phrase this. Kind of ready to be finished, right? We've got a video going up on the Patreon on Friday about like how to know when a prototype is at a stage where you should be finishing it. I've been working on this model for my book. That is way too much on here to go through right now, but if you imagine that this first half is pre-production and there are 2 stages within pre-production where you're kind of discovering what the game is, and then after that point you define what the game is, so you go, right, okay, we know what the game is now, and here's like specifically what it is in terms of like how many things there will be in it and when we're going to finish it and stuff, and then you go into full production after that. I feel like this is a game that really knows what it is. Everything that you've already put in the game, it feels like there's enough scope for all of these things to work together in a really interesting way. And there's no element that you've put in the game yet that doesn't feel like it goes with all the other things. And to come back to that idea earlier about the game being meditative, this is why, or this is when, in fact, this is when game design pillars are helpful. If you've ever heard someone talk about design pillars, often people try and come up with design pillars for their project, which are like, you know, several things that the game just has to be or do. And they will pick things that aren't really design pillars. Because the idea of design pillars is that they are experiential. They are to do with like what the player is supposed to feel emotionally or experience intellectually as they are engaging with your product. And I say product because design pillars are a concept that you would get in product design or marketing as well. They're not just from games. And a word like meditative is really, really helpful because that is the kind of emotional language that you would use to market the game on a Steam page. And if you have an experience very early on of people playing a game and going, oh, it's meditative. It's like, okay, oh yeah, that is what it is. And when I talk about discovering a game as you're prototyping it, that's an example of that. When you find out what kind of the top level emotional thing that the game causes is, then you can go, okay, we'll lock that in place. We'll make that a design pillar. And that means that everything going forward needs to create this kind of meditative feeling. And I feel like everything in the game does do that. We say this is a meditative game and all of the elements of the game work together to produce that. There's nothing in this game that feels like it doesn't go with the other parts. There's lots of little things that could be improved, like the clamp, certain things about the UI, you know, maybe having some iconography or illustrations in the tech tree so that we're not just like like a wall of text. There's lots of little things that could be improved, and, you know, better feedback, stuff that's a little bit more immersive, like adding the smoke when our HP is low. But there's no kind of mechanical system in this game that doesn't feel like it working with the others to create this like nice mix of kind of incremental collecty miney stuff, this interesting kind of floaty physics feeling, which does make it feel meditative. And there is this slight tension there of damaging and blowing up and losing your progress. But that is all tied back to this central idea that the game is about, like, fundamentally about being careful and about, like, not crashing while you're moving very, very slowly, this big cumbersome ship. And that just all works really, really well together. So it feels like a game that is, you know, it's at the middle of development. It knows what it is. You're not like experimenting in lots of different directions to kind of work out what the game is. You know what this game is. So if I were you, I would, you know, lock those terms in. Like, it's meditative. It's a meditative game that gradually unfolds as you automate other things, because I think that concept of unfolding is very helpful as well. You know, that first moment where I went from just piloting to the ship to getting to the build menu to seeing the sector zoomed out and being able to place things, and then starting to think about how things will automatically move around the space. Great. You know, that's kind of unfolding, this kind of like fractal sense that you start on this smaller version of the game and then it folds out into this bigger thing. But each of those layers is still using the same set of core things of like the physics of the rocks moving around, and I imagine there's also a potential here that you can kind of create your own problems, where as the rocks get pushed around automatically, you might fly into them, which is great as well. And you might say, oh, that's not very chill, but again, that's why meditative is such a good word, because it's got this slight tension, this kind of spooky existential thing going on with the music and the art direction and the particular way that you're doing the sci-fi theming, and that ties in very, very well to the idea of it being meditative, and that, like, the idea of like there is a very slight peril in this game, but the peril is all related to you messing up because you zoned out and you weren't paying proper attention. You know, it's that, like, the idea of like meditating under a waterfall and you're trying not to like pass out or fall asleep or whatever. Great. Yeah, I think this feels like the sort of game where you really just want to sort of set yourself a deadline, and then everything you do on this project, from now until like actually launching it, you can you can judge whether it's a good idea or not by saying, right, I've said I'm going to release this game in 6 months or 12 months or whatever. I've said it needs to be meditative. I've said I want it to be this long, and it becomes a lot easier to decide if certain things you want to do are good ideas or not when you have those things in place. You know, when everything is a moving target and you never put dates or deadlines on things, it's much harder to decide if individual ideas you have are good ideas or not, because the good idea or not is all about the context of the project you're working on. Anything in a game could be a good idea if you're saying you're going to work on it indefinitely for 10 years or whatever. Yeah, I really like this. There's lots of stuff you could do with it, but I feel like even without doing too much more, it works quite well. Although I do kind of agree with Curious Dynamics that you've got this kind of spooky thing and it feels ripe for doing that kind of narrative stuff, even if it's just on the level of Dredge, of like, there's glitchy things happening. Am I going mad? But you can make, I think you can do trippy and meditative at the same time without making it like full-blown shock horror. Okay, we're going to check out Sonar Mining Co. now, which I'm sorry is not necessarily in space, but it could be underwater in space at the same time. We don't know how different universes work. So this is one of the games that was made during Collab Jam. So it had to be prototyped with no text in the original game, and now it's kind of been expanded into a larger thing. This was already a pretty great looking and feeling game. So we're doing almost that kind of node buster flow where you've got a small action game that doesn't take very long. You collect resources, you go back and you invest them, that kind of thing. But we're doing it with this kind of clunky submarine interface. We're going to launch. Congratulations on your promotion to Submarine Operator Worker 0. You've been designated a mining submarine equipped with a mining laser. Your job, mine ores with the laser. Reinvest the ores into upgrades. You are also expected to meet a quota of treasures from the company to improve its submarines. Collect them from the derelict submarines you find along the way. You may notice them by the... I feel like this is telling us too much up front. I don't think we need to... I think it would be more fun to learn about the treasures and stuff as we go on a little bit. Okay. We're going to launch. Frickin' laser. Yeah, the physicality of this is great. Seven ores mined. 0 treasures found, 5 meters traveled, 3 meters depth. Okay. Cool. I'm gonna upgrade my laser. Auto laser. Don't mind if I do. Don't have enough. You can see there's like kind of stuff that upgrades around you as you get these things. So we get a bigger oxygen tank. The environment. I love a bit of skeuomorphic clunk. Okay. Go over here again. Oxygen tank expansion. Engine upgrade so we can go faster, I guess. I'll upgrade. Can't afford that yet. Okay. Let's go. I'm not quite used to how fast we can go now. We've got a faster engine, but that to me is an example of a really interesting upgrade for a game like this, because it's a trade-off. Yeah, it's like, yeah, you're faster, but you're also gonna... You've basically just changed the difficulty setting for yourself by making yourself faster. And now you either need to get better at driving, or you need to upgrade your hull. Right? That's an interesting upgrade. Oh! I broke myself. Look left to start a new dive. Okay, let's get the auto laser. Can I get that yet? No, it costs too much. Let's upgrade the hull then. A lot easier to destroy yourself in this game, so the hull upgrade seems a bit more like a must-have. We all live in a yellow submarine. A yellow submarine. A yellow submarine. In the town where I was born, lived a man who sailed the seas. And he told us of his life in the realm of submarines. It's getting a little bit laggy, but it is because we're playing a web build. And everything... There's no, like, separate scenes in this game, I don't think. It's all happening in the same place. Well, what if Nodebuster was Inscription? Oh. Excuse me, what are you? Oh, that's blocking my laser. Don't do that. Uh-oh. That was cool. I don't know what that was. But in very broad game design terms, we could think of that as a complication. I've been thinking about this a lot recently, of just like... You get people used to doing things a certain way, and then you're like, okay, how can we complicate a thing? So you're doing like a yes and with the player, where you're kind of giving them stuff to do, they get used to it, they start to get comfortable, and then you say, but now there's this thing in the way. There we go. There's a... Is that a treasure? Is that what it is? Kinder egg. Sonar module found. Oh, it was a treasure quota. Okay. Oh, because it was a part of a... Yeah, okay. The fact that it's part of another submarine, I think calling them treasures is a little bit confusing. Okay. What can I upgrade here? Now, what would you call that? It's salvage, isn't it, rather than treasure? I mean, it's a form of treasure. It's just whether or not that's the most kind of intuitive thing to call it. Because treasure to me often just sort of suggests an amount of old coins or something, or an amount of currency rather than like a specific useful object, you know? Save. Can I afford anything? Expand the oxygen tank. Ah, we've got a new set of modules over here. That's where our upgrade went. So when we look around, there's a separate menu over to the left, and that's where we get our sonar upgrade and these other things that we haven't unlocked yet. So we get the sonar zoom, sonar sweep pad, sonar depth. Let's get the... I don't have enough of that yet. Oof. Oof. Yeah, in terms of feedback, I do not have much feedback for this game. I mean, I loved it the first time I played it. I think the tutorial, the way the tutorial was presented is a little bit of a missed opportunity because there's stuff like unlocking the treasure, which I think could be drip fed over a couple of runs. And the reason I think of it as a missed opportunity is you've got that computer, and it's like that computer is the ideal delivery system for having some sort of, you know, emails or something coming in. So you can kind of like gradually introduce some of the broader metagame of the game that way. We've got something that we can't upgrade there. Let's go back here. Oh. And then, yeah, on top of that, it's a little bit clunky because we're running a web build. I would really like to play a downloadable of this because I feel like it's a game where the tactility of the kind of 3D immersive thing of like we are in the ship is spoilt a little bit by the slowdown and the moments of friction that are coming out of this running on a web build. Oh, we've got our auto laser is just a tape over the button holding it down. So we don't need to... This is where you start to realize why the game requires you to like physically use the mouse to do a joystick instead of like, you know, giving you a keyboard shortcut for the button and stuff, because it is supposed to be, you know, it's friction that you're supposed to experience and then automate out of the game. And we've just done that by locking our laser button in, so as soon as we're in range it just fires off automatically now. The great thing about this being presented like a strap like that is it kind of really kind of gives you the sense that the company you're working for is not a very good company. That you're like, you know, upgrading your submarine using duct tape and stuff. Find all treasures to descend. Okay, so we can't go any deeper than that because we haven't found the second treasure. Get into situations like that where you can't like manually zap things. So when stuff's in the way, you can't like choose to zap it. So I guess it's just part of how the game works, but anything over here that we haven't got yet? There's still a hull upgrade we could get, but it costs 100. Yeah, I think that starting screen of instructions is just too much for a game like this that's relatively casual. And there are bits of those instructions where you can kind of... I'd maybe even just wait until someone gets the first treasure and then send them a message about it afterwards, you know? I think it can be tempting to try and foreshadow loads of stuff in your game because you want to convince people that the game's got more stuff in it. But if you can get people hooked on the main activity for sort of 5 or 10 minutes, then you can be a little bit more cagey about stuff that's coming up. You'll probably show some of it off in your screenshots and stuff anyway, you know? Go through there. Although, hang on, if I go here, will it make me a cut through? Yeah. Oof. Still don't have enough for the hull upgrade yet, though. We're just going to focus on trying to get that. Yeah, PVKK is a good reference point here. I actually know the guy that did, guy that lives close to me that made the big physical version of PVKK that they use at shows, where there's like a physical version of the interface. He's like he's an engineer and he builds like physical versions of game interfaces. He made the PVKK one. And I think that's a good reference point for you here, because that game is all about, like, satisfying real clunk. I say this as someone who's only really watched it, I haven't played it yet, but it's just very clearly that's the whole appeal of that game. Just making sure that the clunk kind of feels meaningful and not too much like busy work, you know? There we go. And then we've got this, which is our Kinder Egg. What's in the Kinder Egg? A drill module. Is that going to let us go through the grey bits? Let's go and see. Hello, drill module. What do you do? Drill size. Drill damage. Right, we're going to do a little bit of a play with the drill for a little bit. We can go deeper now. We can go lower. We've got a directional drill now, so I guess this means we can just deliberately crash into stuff if we're facing it with the drill. Oh yeah, that's cool. Okay. Another good complication, because it's making it easier to damage ourselves. The game sort of like pulls you forward into feeling more competent because of the upgrades you're getting, and then you get a new one that's like, okay, now I've got the ability to might carve out a path, which is really powerful, but the trade-off for that ability is I'm going to be bumping into stuff a lot more. So now all of the upgrades I've put into my hull are suddenly like, well, they're paying for themselves, and if I hadn't got them, yeah, I would really need them now. But they're also like, you know, they're reducing in how helpful they are, because suddenly I'm no longer bumping into stuff just because I was careless going around a corner. I'm bumping into stuff because it's just a lot easier to when you're trying to use the drill. So if I were to go this way with the drill, get up here where these larger bits of ore are. Oof. Getting very crunchy on the old audio front now. This is pretty great. If you're watching this and this looks in any way appealing, go and kind of check it out for yourself as well. I'm just going to have a... I do think people need to be able to play this as a download. Yeah, there is a download version, so I should have played it on the download version because it would have been smoother. It's really getting a lot of audio kind of crunch towards the end of that from it. Just not running very well online. Lerolan, the dev in the chat, said we're considering removing the modules and instead let the player buy upgrades through the PC, and the player then has to attach it to the object. A thing that could be cool then as well is if... I mean, you've already got the delivery tube for the like... the modules you find. That could be cool. But yeah, I would... basically stagger the tutorialization and the introduction of mechanics, and then have that stuff come in on the email, because I think you're at an interesting crossover between game genres here. It is a kind of node buster type game, and I don't mean that to say, oh, it's derivative, because I think if you go and watch the incremental talk that I don't know if you're in our Discord or not. Yeah, you are, because you submitted it through the Patreon form. There's a private talk that two members gave, and it's linked over in the incrementals talk about how One of the points one of the devs was making, the dev that makes incremental game that's also a platformer, was basically saying like people people who've made Nodebuster like since Nodebuster sort of got the wrong idea about it. And that is basically that the game is a tech tree with a micro game in between upgrading the tech tree. And the point of the micro game isn't that your micro game should be the same, or your mini game should be the same as Nodebuster's game, right? It should be fundamentally different. It should be a new game for people to learn, because that's what makes this genre work. And then, but the kind of thing that makes it an incremental is like the relationship between, or a certain flavor of incremental is the relationship between doing that very short burst of gameplay and then what you invest in the tech tree, and then the game kind of like just having that structure. This is a really good example of that. We've got a very short game that takes like 30 seconds. We invest our resources, we go back into it. But you've also got this like slightly gritty work simulator thing going on, with it being named after a company, and we've got the computer there. And I think that's an opportunity to have a tiny bit of narrative, like Iron Lung style games, where it's like a grimdark, semi-narrative work simulator type thing. And that way you can have little bits of tutorial stuff that you front loaded come through on the email after run 2 or run 4 or whatever, and you can theme them as if they're story, but they're actually telling you how to play these more long-term parts of the game, like how you unlock more modules and stuff. And I'd just set yourself a rule. It's like, oh, each email will only be 3 lines long maximum. You'd make it very like user-friendly, but you can add a bit of that story flavor of the Sonar Mining Co. is kind of like getting in contact with you and giving you directions to like, oh, you need to dig down further, you need to find this wreckage from this old ship. It might give you a new skill or whatever. But instead of like front loading all of that, you can do it through an email, and that will kind of make it feel like there's a little bit more going on than a Nodebuster, because you'll be presenting that almost as if it's a story, when really it's a kind of tutorial, a slow, stretched out tutorial wrapped up in a little bit of this kind of like grim sci-fi work simulator type story at the same time. It feels like those things go together very well. And the game is basically doing all of that already, right? It's a Nodebuster type game, but all the clunk does give it this like PVKK Iron Lung type. You're doing a job simulator, and it's in this slightly grimdark sci-fi setting. And I think if you take all of the bits of the game that currently feel a bit ropey, like that initial tutorialization or any reworking you're doing of how the unlocks work and stuff, just try and fit it into that space, right? We're fundamentally doing the Nodebuster structure of minigame, upgrade tree, minigame, upgrade tree, minigame, upgrade tree, and anything else that needs to slot in is part of that. But it could also be part of this like very light touch dystopian dark sci-fi story of like the emails that you're getting in, or the things that you're finding as you unlock the treasures and stuff like that. It works really, really well. And yeah, if you submit it again in a couple of months, just remind me that there's a downloadable, because we got quite a lot of like crunchy audio on that towards the end, because it was starting to slow down on the web build. But there might be some optimization stuff to look into there as well, and that often happens on games where you've just got like a single screen and everything's happening on the same screen. It's just easier to end up with those kind of memory leaky type things. But yeah, well done on that. It was already, I think this is a good example of we had this a few times recently, where on the One More Run podcast, where we've gone and looked up old prototypes. But this is a really good example of like a good idea reveals itself quite quickly. Yeah, look, this is, so we played I'm Gonna Let You Cook on the One More Run podcast, and I can't remember if it was cheese or cabbage, but they found this original prototype that was made for Ludum Dare, and it's like so similar to the final game. And I know that the purpose of game jams isn't just to like try and prototype commercial games, but I keep seeing this happen so often when I find a reasonably successful commercial game that started out as a game jam entry. If you go back and play the game jam entry, it's so close to what made the final game cool. And I think this is a good example of why you should make lots of little things and not necessarily finish them, right? Make lots of little things just to work out what's cool, and the things that are cool just kind of reveal themselves very, very quickly. And I feel like Sonar Mining Co. is a good example of that. But yeah, we just keep seeing this pattern where there's games where you can like look at the early prototype and it's just so much of what ended up being good about the final game is just already there in the start. You got the feedback from a publisher that the game might not work well with content creators because the sonar is so small. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, you might even be able to like just zoom it in a little bit there. Do some weird visual distortion so the camera kind of comes down a little bit and the joystick and the button are a little bit kind of further up in your face. But I understand that you need the stuff around to show the oxygen and everything. But yeah, I don't know, something you can play around with. Publisher feedback is an interesting one. I would always take things with a pinch of salt and make sure that you're like, if you take heed of something, it's from a publisher you really respect and that's like the specific one you want to work with, or it's because it's come from multiple places. Because I know sometimes, particularly in contexts where people are rejecting you or saying no to you for some reason, those are the kind of contexts where people are more likely to make up some sort of feedback because they feel like they have to say something. And it might be that there's like 10 little things that they don't like and they can't quite put a finger on it, so they'll just come up with one big reason why the thing isn't good, and it's not actually the best example of feedback you could get. So I would think about that stuff. It might even be that you can resolve the problem by not necessarily making the sonar bigger, but by like doing more stuff with like colors and lights and just making it easier at a glance to see what's happening on the screen. So I think a good test would be to like show people footage of the game when they're not playing it and like turn the sound down and ask people to explain what they think all the things are on the screen. Because if you want to like make things better for as a viewing thing for when people are watching a content creator, that might help you with that. Yeah, so a lot of the stuff that makes something a good spectator game for people to watch on a stream is just kind of generally good visual design practice anyway. So let me just have a look on here again. So if we wanted to make the game read better, when people are just sort of watching it and not playing it themselves. Because when I'm playing it, I'm very much, let me just skip this. Can I jump through that very quickly? So when I'm playing it, I'm sort of just looking here, right? And it's very easy for me to like mentally block out a lot of other stuff. So let's have a look. So we need to be able to see, we've got like a kind of safe zone around here. And we need to be able to see this, don't we? We need to be able to see this. We need to be able to see this as the stuff comes in. But we probably could zoom in a little bit so that this, you know, zoom up to this line here. So it might not be an issue of the sonar being physically too small, but we might be able to zoom in a little bit once we're in dive mode. And then I could think about like how much you make things stand out. It could also be stuff like when we go into dive mode, we change the lighting so that things stand out more. Because at the moment we've always got this kind of yellow glow coming in. And that might be better when we're like modifying the rig and upgrading stuff. But then when we go into dive mode, maybe it's more like now we want Now we want this to be the main focal point, and we want to turn off some of this lighting, even if it's pre-baked. And maybe there's some kind of light on the console, but a lot of other things become darker, right? So there's some visual design things you can do with like zooming the camera or changing the lighting of things. They're going to change the emphasis. And the problem might initially be described as this screen is too small. But the issue might actually be that the screen is small, and because everything around it is lit, is kind of fighting for attention. Whereas if we go from like a yellow glow when we're in build mode, and then when we're in pilot mode, all of the yellow glow in the background calms down and it becomes like a dim blue thing. And then the yellow or the white is only on the things we want to really like draw attention to at that moment. There's different ways around that problem, and I think if you intend to go back to that publisher again, I think the thing at that stage is just showing that you addressed the problem in some way. And it might not be as simple as make the screen bigger, right? It might be, okay, we heard what you said. Screen's hard to see because it's small. We've done some other things to emphasize the size of the screen or whatever. Yeah. But that's kind of all I've got for today, I think. I'm just going to check what we've got coming up. If you're watching live, or if you're watching after the fact, please do a like on the video. It will help to show it to people with similar interests to you. What have we got coming up next? So later this week, we are going to do our games of Dice and Gambling. That is the day after tomorrow, which is Thursday. Final one for this week. So everything that anyone has sent me recently that has dice or some obvious kind of push your luck element in it. And also, actually, if you're watching this back, if you're watching the VOD and you know that you submitted a game and it's in my queue and you know that it's got some sort of push your luck dice-based mechanic in and it's not in this list here of games that we're going to play on Thursday, do feel free to leave a message and say, hey, I submitted Dicey Dice 9000. Why are you not playing that on Thursday in the dice games? Because it may just be that as I was going through the backlog of lots of games, I will do stuff like pick a theme, and this is dice and luck. And I will go through the spreadsheet and search for dice, die, luck, gamble, and I will pick out games that way. And I think the games coming up on Thursday, I think we have like 2 or 3 patrons games and at least 1 from the public spreadsheet. If you submitted something to the public spreadsheet over on indiegameclinic.com and you think it should be in that stream and it's not, and you're watching this now, before Thursday the 13th of August, just leave a message and say, hey, why is my game not on that list? It should be. So yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I think Blunder Construction is more of a physics thing. It's definitely push your lucky, right? But I feel like we can find another time for that game because it's not like the main thing. I'm thinking specifically of dice and gambling really rather than stuff. I feel like Blunder Construction is pushing your luck with your own skill, which is a slightly different focus. But yeah. Thanks for joining today. If you're new to the channel, please do go and check out, you can check out indiegameclinic.com to find out more about what we're doing here. This channel is the streams like you're watching now. It's also video essays I do about game design and thoughts on that. It's also our Patreon, which is how people support this channel. It allows me to do things that I find personally interesting on the channel and not have to do that stuff that we talked about earlier of, you know, always just kind of pandering to people that are totally new to making games in the last 6 months. There's also the new Q&A videos I'm doing. I'm currently doing 3 of these a month. There'll be some months where we don't do them, but this is like a backer reward. Folks that are in the slightly higher tiers get to set some questions once a month, and then everyone who's in any tier on the Patreon gets those videos. So we had a video on Friday that was just me mulling through what does it mean to sort of intuitively design games, and someone else asked the Our Games Art question, which I don't know. I think it's a question of limited utility. There's another one of these going up this Friday that is about prototypes. And that table that I showed you earlier of like, how do you know when you're out of prototyping? How do you know when you're out of pre-production? How do you know when to commit to a project versus kind of start another one? We're doing a little talk on that on Friday. Those will keep going for a while. I have a feeling in a couple of months I'm going to be so deep into dev on my own game that some of these additional backer rewards will kind of go away for a month or two, and I might slow down on the Q&As and offer some like silly temporary rewards related to like folks in certain tiers can tell me to put a particular monster or a particular food in my game, and I'll do that, kind of like people do with Kickstarter projects where they allow people to have some sort of creative involvement in the project. So I think when we get a little bit closer to Christmas, I'm going to be very, very busy with my own game, and at that stage some of the backer rewards on our Patreon will temporarily become kind of that kind of thing. But yeah, thanks to everyone who supports that already. Folks who are part of the Patreon and part of our private Discord are able to sort of jump the queue on submitting games for these streams. Most of the, I would say more than half of the games that I build the streams around nowadays are Patreon backers, just because there's enough of you now to be able to do that. I do try and get around to other people's games that have been submitted through the form on indiegameclinic.com as well. But there are so many of them that I will never get through all of them. So I occasionally go through that form and try and do like a longer stream where I pick out all of the itch prototypes, or like a set of smaller games that would be easy to play like 10 of in 2 hours or something like that. But yeah, that's kind of how we work here at the moment. So thanks for joining today. Have a good rest of your day, and I will see some of you back on Thursday.